On the eve of the National Day in 1969, when Chairman Mao Zedong passed by Shanghai, relevant personnel in Shanghai reported to him the situation of Shanghai's industrial production, including the manufacture and launch of rockets. After hearing this, Mao Zedong asked, "Have you ever built an airplane?" In late July 1970, Chairman Mao Zedong brought up this topic again when he was inspecting work in Shanghai. He said, "Shanghai's industrial technology base is so good, it can build airplanes." In fact, it was not only Mao Zedong's wish to build his own large aircraft. In 1968, after the successful test flight of my country's H-6, Premier Zhou Enlai proposed, "Can a jet airliner be designed on the basis of H-6? It was designed and manufactured on the basis of that bomber. At that time, Foreign Minister Marshal Chen Yi also said, "As the foreign minister, I cannot take my own plane when I go abroad, so my status is different from other countries." Therefore, after Chairman Mao Zedong issued specific instructions on the large airliner, he immediately acted up and down. On August 21, 1970, with the approval of Premier Zhou Enlai, the National Defense Industry Leading Group of the State Planning Commission and the Military Commission approved the report on the trial production and production of transport aircraft in Shanghai proposed by the Aviation Industry Leading Group, and issued a large-scale passenger aircraft to Shanghai. Engine development tasks, and included in the national plan. So far, the Yunji aircraft project codenamed Project 708 has been officially launched. At the same time as the 708 project, there are also 701, the foundation of the Long March 4th rocket, 718, Yuanwang missile satellite launch measurement ship, and 728, Qinzhou nuclear power plant, projects. These projects later became important weapons of the great powers. After the 708 project was launched, it almost started from scratch, and the whole country's system made efforts, and immediately entered the rhythm of seizing the day and night. In September 1970, the first batch of support personnel from the 3 Machinery Department arrived in Shanghai, with Xiong Yan and Ma Fengzhan as the heads of the design team. In February 1972, at the office meeting of the Military Commission to listen to the report of the Aviation Industry Group, Ye Jianying pointed out that the development of 708 is a matter for the people of the whole country, and it is the glory of the Chinese people. Select the better ones from the designers to review the design. It is also very useful in the military. Delay the long-distance bombing, concentrate on the 708 first. In 1973, when someone proposed to buy the British VC-10 large airliner patent for trial production, Premier Zhou commented in February 1974, "I agree not to buy this kind of patent. We have enough types of imported aircraft, thus ensuring our own the development and operation of 10 will not be disturbed." On January 15, 1972, the Central Military Commission approved the plan to transport 10 aircraft with 4 engines for wing cranes. On the basis of the institutional advantages of national large-scale cooperation, and with the active efforts of selfless dedication from top to bottom, it took only 4 years and 8 months for the first static testing machine to leave the factory in September 1976. This has made my country's large passenger aircraft stand on the same starting line as European Airbus, and in some respects has surpassed the manufacturing speed of Airbus. The second Y-10 passenger plane made its maiden flight on September 26, 1980. http URL www.zvideo/1334805086200459264. It took less than 10 years for Yunji to go from project to first flight. Moreover, this project is completely different from other aircraft models. There are almost no basic conditions such as factory buildings, offices, materials, equipment, etc., and everything starts from scratch. The development cost of Yun-10 totaled 580 million yuan, while the cost of developing a civil large passenger aircraft in the West at the same time was generally 1.5 to 2 billion US dollars. What about the successful Yunji flight test? The cabin of Yunji is arranged according to the economy class with 149 seats, and the mixed class arrangement is 124 seats. The maximum takeoff weight is 110 tons, the maximum cruising speed is 974 km per hour, the practical ceiling is as high as 12,000 meters, and the maximum range is 8,300 kilometers, which is the same level as Boeing 707. What are the characteristics of the successful Yun-10 flight test? Nearly 100 new materials, More than 100 new standards and new processes were used in the development of Yunji aircraft, and valuable experience in the development and organization of work was gained. The localization rate of the airframe is 100%, and the localization rate of the avionics and mechanical systems exceeds 96%, except for the engine purchased from abroad. Its development has broken through the design specifications of Soviet aircraft, and it is the first time that my country has developed it with reference to the FAR 25 standard of the U.S. airworthiness regulations. Moreover, the entire development process has not relied on a foreigner. She is a large aircraft with completely independent intellectual property rights in my country. At the same time, Yunji has cited a large number of foreign advanced technologies, and it is not a product of closed doors. The implementation of Project 708 has brought a qualitative leap to my country's aviation research and design. The Ministry of Aeronautics and Astronautics at that time commented that it filled the gap in this aspect of my country's civil aviation industry. What is the relationship between the successful flight test and the Boeing 707? In the overall design, reference was made to the most advanced Boeing 707 at that time, but it was indeed very different. The air attaché of the U.S. Embassy in China boarded the plane to observe in person. He used to be a Boeing 707 pilot and has thousands of hours of Boeing 707 flying experience. As soon as the military officer boarded the gangway and looked back at the cabin door, he asserted that this plane is completely different from the Boeing 707, because I am too familiar with the Boeing 707. It is a matter of intellectual property rights and technology competition. Boeing's vice president also attaches great importance to Yunji and boarded the plane to observe it in person. After a careful inspection of Yunji, it was concluded that this is a completely independent practice of the Chinese in this field. What are the highlights of the successful Yun-10 flight test? The Yun-10 that took the test flight had a total of 130 test flights and 170 flight hours from its first test flight in September 1980 to its grounding in February 1985. The farthest range is 3,600 kilometers, the maximum speed is 930 kilometers per hour, the maximum flight ceiling is 11,000 meters, and the longest air flight time is 4 hours and 49 minutes. No problems have occurred. Flying almost all over the east, west, north, and south of China, Beijing, Hefei, Harbin, Urumqi, Guangzhou, Kunming, Chengdu, all left brilliant trails. On December 8, 1981, the Y-10 aircraft flew from Shanghai to Beijing Nanyuan Airport for a report flight. The crew conducted a second flight in Beijing. The report flight was very exciting, and was praised by the leaders of the Air Force, the Navy, the 3rd Aircraft Department and the general public in the capital. It was unanimously praised, and everyone highly praised the Yunji aircraft with one voice. More than 4,400 people from all walks of life in the capital lined up to board the aircraft to visit. The most spectacular test flight of Yunji was from Chengdu to Lhasa, Tibet. Not once but 7 times, and it is disaster relief with heavy burdens. After the Republic opened up air routes to Tibet, due to the limitation of the flying height of the aircraft, they did not fly over in the true sense, but crossed among many peaks on the roof of the world. Only Yunji realized the real overflight. In December 1983, Tibet was hit by a natural disaster, and a large amount of supplies needed to be transported. The State Economic Commission required the Yun-10 aircraft, which was in the test flight state, to carry out the task of cargoing Lhasa. From March 9 to 16, 1984, the 10th test aircraft crew took great risks to transport urgently needed items for the Tibetan compatriots of the troops stationed in Tibet 7 times. Since the airport did not have corresponding refueling and charging equipment, the plane arrived at Ganga Airport in the morning without turning off the engine, and immediately left Ganga Airport in the afternoon after unloading and returned to Chengdu Shuangliu Airport. There were no failures during the 7 cargo flights to Lhasa. The accident was completed very smoothly. The Yun-10 aircraft is the world's first cargo Lhasa aircraft in the test flight stage, and it has withstood the test. At that time, the staff at Chengdu Airport were very surprised and asked, "Are you on a test flight or on duty?" They lamented, "Where is this a test flight? It flies more frequently than us." When the civil aviation pilots at Chengdu Airport visited the plane, they were very proud and very angry. They said, "Such a good thing, why don't you bring us to fly? What's the point of luck being successful?" The successful development of Yun-10 has enabled my country to have the complex technology to design and manufacture large-scale aircraft. This not only filled the gap that my country's aviation industry could not manufacture large-scale aircraft before, but also made my country the fifth country after the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and France. Master the country that builds 100-ton jets. Moreover, during the 10 years of Yunji's development, the 915 engine with comparable performance to the JT3D7 was successfully developed simultaneously, and it was successfully installed on the 707 for flight tests. The most commendable thing is that it has cultivated and tempered the team, which has laid the foundation for the further development of China's civil machinery industry. This is a valuable asset in my country's aviation industry. At that time, the domestic public opinion circle praised it as a good combination of self-reliance and the introduction of foreign technology. The West has paid great attention to the successful development of my country's Yun-10. Steiner, who was Boeing's vice president at the time, wrote an article in Aviation Weekly in May 1980, Yunji is not a copy of Boeing, but rather, it is the first decade of the country's development of its ability to design and manufacture transport aircraft. Long-term training. He also said to his Chinese counterparts, how to develop a large jet transport aircraft, you have also graduated, we just graduated early. On November 28, 1980, Reuters published an article saying, after obtaining this highly sophisticated technology, China can no longer be regarded as a backward country. After seeing the aircraft, a vice president of Douglas of the United States said to his Chinese counterparts, your aviation industry has caught up in 15 years. After 16 years of research and development, manufacturing, certification, and formal operation, the first large C919 aircraft officially started commercial flight today. At 10:32 a.m. on May 28, China Eastern Airlines used the world's first C919 large passenger aircraft delivered by China Commercial Aircraft Corporation to execute Flight MU-9191. It took off from Shanghai Hongqiao Airport and arrived at Beijing Capital International Airport at 12:31. Marking that the large aircraft C919 successfully completed its first commercial flight. This flight marks the comprehensive completion of C919's development, manufacturing, certification, and operation, the official start of China's civil aviation commercial operation of domestic large aircraft, and the air experience of China's large aircraft officially reaching consumers. Nearly 130 passengers on the inaugural flight preempted. On the same day, nearly 130 passengers on the inaugural flight early experienced the air journey brought by China Eastern Airlines C919. After Flight MU-9191 arrives at Beijing Capital Airport, it will pass through the water gate which symbolizes the highest civil aviation etiquette. Passengers and civil aviation workers have witnessed the successful commercial maiden flight of C919. Mr. Guo, a passenger, was interviewed by a reporter from China Securities Journal. The China Securities Journal interviewed the passenger Mr. Guo, who lives in Lanzhou, Gansu Province. After receiving the invitation from China Eastern Airlines, he was selected from 40,000 passengers who made reservations. He was so excited that he did not hesitate to pay more than 2,000 yuan to buy a ticket, and made a special trip from Lanzhou to Shanghai to experience the ride. He said that the C919 is an important weapon for the country, and he himself is also an aviation researcher. It was his dream to fly a domestically produced large aircraft when he was in college. Image source, China Eastern Airlines. It is reported that under the guidance of the Civil Aviation Administration, China Eastern Airlines has organized and completed the verification and test flight of this model and the verification of all passenger operation. Flight operation requirements. The CAAC reviewed and inspected the verification results, confirmed that China Eastern Airlines has the capability to safely operate the C919 aircraft, and recently issued the corresponding operation approval, approving the commercial operation of the C919 aircraft. China Eastern Airlines has set up C919 Flight Department, C919 Cabin Department, established C919 Dispatch and Release Seats, full-time engineering management positions, Domestic Aircraft Maintenance Management Center and other professional departments, reserved relevant professionals, and accumulated system-wide safe operation and service guaranteed experience. According to the plan, the first C919 of China Eastern Airlines will implement the initial commercial operation on the Shanghai Hongqiao Chengdu Tianfu route. With the subsequent introduction of this model, it will be gradually expanded to more routes. The C919 large passenger aircraft is my country's first self-developed jet trunk airliner in accordance with international airworthiness standards and has independent intellectual property rights. It was established in 2007 and made its first flight in 2017. On September 29, 2022, it obtained the Type Certificate, TC Certificate, from the Civil Aviation Administration of China. On December 9, 2022, China Eastern Airlines, as the world's first user, officially received the world's first delivery aircraft numbered B919A from COMAC. Incorporate a series of Chinese cultural elements. According to China Eastern Airlines, as the world's first C919 airline, China Eastern Airlines runs through the customer experience in the entire process of C919 service process and service product design. The themed meals voted by passengers will appear on the flight. It has the same exclusive Chinese logo as the first delivered C919 fuselage, allowing passengers to experience a special journey experience. Image source, China Eastern Airlines. The aircraft cabin is equipped with 20 12-inch hoisting monitors, which support high-definition 1080p movie projections. This is also the first time China Eastern Airlines single-aisle fleet has introduced 1080p program loading. China Eastern Airlines has specially filmed an exclusive aviation safety notice video for the C919 with the theme of national color dyes the mountains and rivers. Everything is beautiful as far as the eye can see. The video fits the facilities and features of the C919 aircraft, and cleverly incorporates a series of Chinese cultural elements in a pleasant audio-visual form, adding a surprise to passengers before the flight takes off. The C919 business class and economy class of China Eastern Airlines use a new generation of domestic cabin seats that are completely independently developed. Among them, 8 business class seats are all aluminum alloy frame structure, with a cradle design. The backrest can reach 120 degrees, and the distance between the front and rear seats exceeds 1 meter. 156 economy class seats are designed with a 3-to-3 layout. The C919 cabin has a 2.25 with an aisle height of 1.5 meters. Passengers can feel comfortable visual space at the top and in front. China Eastern Airlines stated that in the future, China Eastern Airlines will join hands with all relevant parties to commit to high quality and refined operation of C919, aiming at the goal of flying out safety, flying ambition, flying out brand, flying out efficiency, and helping C919 to become a global industry recognized. The successful model will continuously increase the understanding and love of China Eastern Airlines C919 by passengers and the public, provide a successful practice sample for the large-scale commercial operation of C919, and continue to contribute Eastern Airlines' strength to China's large aircraft industry. Image source, CCTV News. Orders from multiple airlines. At present, many airlines and aircraft leasing companies have signed cooperation agreements on the C919 with COMAC. According to the 2022 Shanghai Science and Technology Progress Report released by the Shanghai Municipal Science and Technology Commission, by the end of 2022, the C919 large passenger aircraft has received a total of 1,035 orders from 32 customers. On January 12, 2023, Zhang Yujin, a representative of the Shanghai Municipal People's Congress, member of the Standing Committee of the Party Committee and Deputy General Manager of Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, revealed in an interview with reporters that the current number of C919 orders is close to 1,200. Reached 150. At the 14th China International Aviation and Aerospace Expo held in November 2022, 7 companies including CDB Financial Leasing, ICBC Financial Leasing, CCB Financial Leasing, Bank of Communications Financial Leasing, China Merchants Bank Financial Leasing, SPDB Financial Leasing and Suyin Financial Leasing. The leasing company signed a firm order for 300 C919 aircraft and 30 ARJ21 aircraft with COMAC. On April 27, 2023, HNA Aviation Group and COMAC signed a framework order agreement for 100 C919 and ARJ21 aircraft in Shanghai. The 100 domestically made aircraft signed this time include 60 C919 aircraft and 40 ARJ21 aircraft. The 60 C919 aircraft include 30 Urumqi Airlines and 30 Superna Airlines. In the future, the two parties will also cooperate in the fields of aircraft import and export, aviation material maintenance, logistics warehousing, new technology application, aviation material support, maintenance support, aircraft configuration optimization, etc. The Dream Community. On May 25, China Eastern Airlines held a 2022 performance briefing in the form of online interaction. Li, vice chairman and general manager of the company, said that in March 2021, the company and Comac officially signed a purchase agreement for 5 C919 passenger aircraft. The first C919 aircraft has been delivered to the company at the end of 2022 and is expected to be put into actual operation in the near future. C919 will be commercially operated from Shanghai as its main base. The company plans to complete the introduction of 5 C919s in 2022 and 2023, and will decide on the follow-up introduction plan based on the actual operating conditions and the company's aviation network planning. On May 25, Air China and China Southern Airlines also held a performance briefing. Air China chairman Ma Chongxian said that in 2010, the company signed a purchase agreement with Comac for 20 C919 aircraft and continued to pay attention to the progress of C919. Han Wenzheng, vice chairman and general manager of China Southern Airlines, said that China Southern Airlines maintains a high degree of attention to the C919 aircraft, maintains close communication with Comac, and will promote follow-up work in accordance with relevant procedures. "10 jobs that will disappear in the future, and 10 occupations that will explode in demand." In the era when the world is being overturned by the new crown epidemic, jobs are no longer stable, and some industries will disappear due to the rapid development of artificial intelligence. What are the 10 industries that are expected to be eliminated in the future, and what are the 10 most promising industries in the future? The COVID-19 pandemic has hit the world like never before, but that's not the only factor affecting job security. August 28, in the era when the world is being overturned by the new crown epidemic, jobs. Amy Smith, founder of Align Tribe, an Australian business management consulting company, said, "With the economic recession and the rise of artificial intelligence, the nature of work in many traditional industries will undoubtedly be changed. No one can really have job security. If you still insist on hiding in your comfort zone, with a proud and complacent, self-sufficient mentality, it will affect your career development." Regarding the jobs that will disappear in the future and the industries where demand will rise, what suggestions does Amy give managers and employees? 10 jobs that will disappear in the future. 1 manager. 2 accountant. 3 lawyer. 4 retail salesperson. 5 bank teller. 6 couriers and postal service workers. 7 travel agency staff. 8 factory assembler. 9 driver. 10 the farmer. Although artificial intelligence is still in the development stage, many labor-intensive jobs will most likely be replaced by artificial intelligence. According to the McKinsey Global Institute, by 2030, artificial intelligence will increase the global economic output by $13 trillion per year. Although the advancement of technology can bring value to the company, it will also affect the company's human resources. A study by Oxford Economics predicts that by 2030, the United States will lose more than 1.5 million jobs to artificial intelligence. In China, that number has surpassed 11 million. For the European Union, nearly 2 million people will be replaced by robots. Amy shared, "Job opportunities will change, technological advancement is inevitable after all. Some jobs may become obsolete, but that doesn't mean the people who hold them will also be obsolete." McKinsey & Company predicts that by 2030, 60% of jobs will be automated, and with it, new roles will be created. "You can now be a drone manager, an SEO specialist, or even a chief listening officer," she said. "These are jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago." What's important for people at high risk of losing their jobs due to automation are transferable vocational skills. In the new era of work in the future, employees no longer just want to be a trivial worker, and companies that understand this will stand out. When traditional positions are eliminated in the future, you must improve your skills to transition to new jobs, and add value to the company by demonstrating your professional knowledge and abilities. Amy also suggested, as more and more workplaces will adopt artificial intelligence in the future, the biggest challenge that executives need to face is how to connect employees with these technologies. 10 jobs that will see increased demand in the future. 1 cybersecurity. 2 data scientists. 3 aged care workers and caregivers. 4 health professionals. 5 software developer. 6. User experience design. 7. Robotics engineering. 8. Digital marketing. 9. Sustainability specialist. 10. Town planner. In 1914, the American automobile company Henry Ford became the first batch of companies to implement the 9-to-5 work system, and this work system that has lasted for decades will undergo tremendous changes in the future. The jobs that will be most in demand in the future will not only be driven by technological factors, but also by demographic factors, Amy explained. She believes that as jobs become more mobile, it is critical for employees to upskill and prepare them for the jobs of the future. People need to be digitally savvy, have good people skills and problem-solving skills if they want to have job security in the future, and these are skills that businesses are prioritizing. Image, Unsplash. According to a survey report released by the World Economic Forum on April 30 local time, factors such as new technologies and economic growth deceleration will affect the global employment situation in the next 5 years, and it is expected that 14 million jobs will be lost as a result. According to a survey report released by the World Economic Forum, according to CNN, the report predicts that by 2027, 69 million new jobs will be added worldwide, and 83 million jobs will disappear during the same period, which means a net loss of 14 million jobs, which is equivalent to the current net loss of global employment. 2%. The report is based on survey results of 803 companies around the world and an analysis of a database of 673 million job information. 1 Philosophy is an ideological tool for maintaining a class right to speak in class struggle. 1 Philosophy. At the beginning of On Contradiction, Chairman Mao quoted Lenin's point of view: the unity of opposites is the most fundamental law of materialist dialectics, and it is the essence and core of materialist dialectics. The view that the law of contradiction occupies a fundamental position in materialist dialectics was accurately grasped by Chairman Mao, and he used the core view of contradiction in dialectics accurately and extensively during his revolutionary career. In the class struggle, Marxist philosophy competes with all philosophies that are not conducive to the proletarian revolution for the right to interpret the truth, and provides ideological weapons for the proletariat to seize the revolutionary power, thus establishing the dominance of the correct proletarian revolutionary line. As Chairman Mao said in On Contradiction, philosophical work must eliminate bourgeois erroneous ideas such as dogmatism and metaphysics. During the Revolutionary War period, Chairman Mao's On Practice, On Contradiction, and later on The Correct Handling of Contradictions Among the People are all brilliant works condensed by Chairman Mao with a lot of experience and lessons in revolutionary practice, and guided is the great course of Chinese revolution and construction. 2. The main history of Chairman Mao's philosophical practice. In the struggle against another kind of subjectivism represented by bourgeois bureaucratism, utopianism, subjectivist intellectual stratums pro-Soviet dogmatism, and the narrow empiricism of peasant small producers, and later the bureaucracy that violated scientific socialism, in the struggle against revisionism represented by liberalism corrupted by the bourgeoisie, Chairman Mao opened up a new realm of materialist dialectic philosophy. First, because the subjectivism of the pro-Soviet dogmatic intellectuals was out of touch with the actual situation in China, they practiced the erroneous line of left opportunism in all aspects of politics, military affairs, and ideology, causing catastrophic losses to the Chinese Revolution. Aiming at the problem of the dogmatic pro-Soviet faction that is divorced from reality, Comrade Mao Zedong proceeded from the actual situation in China, combined the general principles of Marxist epistemology with the actual situation in China, and for the first time systematically and comprehensively discussed the two leaps of the materialist dialectical epistemology. Opening up all the roads of Sinicization of Marxism starting from China's reality provides a philosophical basis for establishing our party's work policy of seeking truth from facts, forming our party's style of linking theory with practice, and fundamentally eliminating pro-Soviet dogmatism. Second, the dogmatist line regards the Soviet theory as a Bible, deifies the Soviet theory, and opposes the wrong line that protests China's special actual conditions and leads to divorce from China's actual conditions. It has long been the ruling line within the party and brought disaster to the Chinese Revolution. Loss. In response to dogmatism's one-sided deification of Soviet dogma and opposition to China's own theoretical innovation, Comrade Mao Zedong insisted on proceeding from China's special reality, and for the first time comprehensively and detailedly discussed the dialectical relationship between the universality and particularity of contradictions, especially the detailed theory of the particularity of contradictions. The party's line of specific analysis of specific issues in different periods and regions, the combination of general and specific, and the combination of Marxism and China's reality provides a philosophical basis. Third, in order to meet the needs of the work of the Revolutionary War and party building, and to adapt to the changes in the revolutionary situation in different periods, and to further deepen the implementation of the line of seeking truth from facts, Comrade Mao Zedong focused on the primary and secondary contradictions and the main contradiction of contradictions in materialist dialectics for the first time. The second aspect and the theory of contradiction transformation provide a strong philosophical basis for the formation of our party's fine tradition of grasping the main contradiction and making overall plans. Fourth, in order to adapt to the social reality of our country where the main population is small farmers who lack theoretical understanding, and to popularize the basic position and methods of Marxism, Comrade Mao Zedong for the first time comprehensively, systematically, and popularly transformed materialist dialectics into specific tasks for analyzing and solving problems. The methods and strategies of struggle have enabled the masses of the people to truly learn and popularize Marxist philosophy like never before. Fifth, based on the practical lessons of the restoration of monopoly bureaucratic capitalism in the Soviet Union and the internal germination of our country, Comrade Mao Zedong for the first time systematically put forward the theory of socialist contradictions and the theory of preventing the deterioration of the revolutionary leadership after the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat, which greatly developed the history. Materialism provides the most powerful philosophical basis for opening up the road to prevent the deterioration of revolutionary leadership collectives under the dictatorship of the proletariat. This course focuses on this philosophical practice. 3. On contradiction and revolutionary history. 1. Two views of the universe. As Chairman Mao said, metaphysics believes that development is the increase and decrease of quantity, which is repetition. In capitalist society, it can be used by the bourgeoisie to fool the people. In socialist society, those corrupted by this kind of erroneous thinking will also ignore the internal qualitative changes brought about by the interaction between different things in the world due to the contradictions in the world, and unintentionally look at one aspect of the world in isolation, ignoring the other side, ignoring the changes and developments brought about by the internal contradictions of things. It is precisely because of his thorough opposition to metaphysics and his deep understanding of the law of the unity of opposites that Chairman Mao was extremely predictive that in the first stage of communism, which retained the bourgeois legal rights and the inherent gap in the social division of labor in a socialist society, when revolutionaries have mastered political and economic management power, they may also become counter-revolutionaries, and some integral forces within the proletarian revolutionary camp will also corrupt and degenerate into the bourgeoisie. Therefore, he resolutely insisted on anti-revision and anti-revision all his life, opposed the bureaucracy of the social, political, and economic management cadre class, and prevented the restoration of monopoly bureaucratic capitalism. The practice of restoration of doctrine. Chairman Mao severely criticized the erroneous thinking of the Soviet revisionists that the bourgeoisie will not appear in the proletarian camp, there is no class contradiction in a socialist society, and ignored the objectively existing bourgeois legal rights, and accurately predicted that if the Soviet Union lasted for a long time, if this continues, satellites go up to the sky, and red flags fall to the ground. Dialectics. It is believed that there is internal contradiction, unity of opposites, in the whole world. Due to the internal contradiction of each thing, the internal contradictions of each thing, internal is the root, internal cause first, and the mutual influence relationship of the contradictions between things, interaction, resulting in the movement, change, and development of things. From the perspective of internal production relations, based on dialectics and specific investigations of the actual situation, after the basic victory of the socialist revolution, Chairman Mao judged that under the conditions of internal production relations in a socialist country, there were also clear internal contradictions. The internal gap between the socio-economic and political management class and the broadest working class, the internal gap between mental workers and manual workers, simple laborers and complex laborers within the working class, the gap between the working class and the peasant class, the upper and lower levels within the socio-political and economic managerial class. However, once the social, economic, and political managers deteriorate, they become monopoly bureaucratic bourgeoisie. From the perspective of internal superstructure, after the establishment of socialist production relations, the remnants of feudal society and capitalist society still have considerable strength in the field of superstructure, especially in the field of ideology and culture. The various struggles between the public heart and selfish desires, Proletarian people's democracy and bureaucracy, collective dedication, and privileged monopoly ideology are essentially the struggle between the two lines of the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. At the same time, the peaceful evolution of Western imperialism has serious external threats. External factors work through internal factors. Therefore, during his lifetime, Chairman Mao fought to the end against the elements of the restoration of capitalism in the field of internal production relations and superstructure. As Chairman Mao said in On Contradiction, to lead the revolution to victory, a political party must rely on the correctness of its own political line and the consolidation of its organization. 2. The universality of contradictions. Contradiction exists in the development process of all things, and also exists in the development process of each thing from beginning to end. All phenomena and processes contain mutual exclusion, mutual opposition, and mutual struggle tendencies, as well as interdependence, mutual influence, and mutual transformation to a certain extent. Tendency. Chairman Mao explained that every difference in the world is a contradiction, and the confrontation and struggle of different ideas within the party are actually the reflection of class contradictions within the party. If we ignore ideological struggles and line struggles within the party and pursue pure conciliatoryism, the life of the party will also cease. We go through the history of the party. Watching several line struggles, they are actually class struggles. First, the struggle against Chen Duxiu is a struggle against the one-sided and pessimistic erroneous philosophy of subjective idealism that is divorced from reality and metaphysics, the erroneous thought of national bourgeois right opportunism. Second, the struggle against the three left lines of Chu Kaiyubai's blind activism, Li Lisan's adventurism, and Wang Ming's opportunism. It is a struggle against the fanatical petty bourgeoisie's subjective idealism, metaphysical dogmatism, bookism, erroneous philosophical thinking that is divorced from the actual situation and one-sidedly eager for quick victory. Third, the struggle against Zhang Qiuhao's right opportunism is a struggle against the bourgeoisie's erroneous philosophy of metaphysical idealism, which is divorced from reality and one-sided passivity, and the erroneous ideas of sectarianism and bureaucracy of the national bourgeoisie. Fourth, in the early days of the founding of the People's Republic of China, the struggle against Gao Gang and other pro-Soviet people who wanted to copy the Soviet model and get close to the Soviet Union was a struggle against the bourgeoisie's subjective idealism, right-leaning opportunism, and wrong philosophical thinking that was divorced from China's reality. Fifth, in the early days of the founding of the People's Republic of China, the struggle against consolidating the new democratic order, opposing socialist transformation, and opposing the erroneous ideas of rural cooperatives was a mistake of unintentionally standing on the wrong position of the bourgeoisie caused by isolated and static mechanical materialism and ignoring society. A battle of ideas. Chairman Mao emphasized that contradictions are universal and absolute. Therefore, in a socialist society, there are also general social contradictions. The theory of socialist contradiction is Chairman Mao's theoretical innovation, and it is also the inheritance and development of contradiction. Differences are contradictions, and urban ownership by the whole people and collective ownership are contradictions that exist objectively. Therefore, it is necessary to develop a socialist commodity economy as a communication medium, and only through agricultural cooperation can the countryside gradually change from a collective ownership economy, semi-public ownership, to a whole people ownership economy, public ownership, transition. Only rural collective cooperation can concentrate on exchange for agricultural capital to develop industrialization, and only rural collective cooperation can allow rural areas to concentrate funds to expand industrial reproduction and infrastructure construction, thereby solving the problem of urban-rural class gap. It is precisely because of the precise grasp of this contradiction that Chairman Mao attached great importance to rural collective cooperation to solve the gap between urban and rural areas. The difference in ownership between urban and rural areas and the existence of an 8-level system are common contradictions in socialist society. Chairman Mao also pointed out that in the entire socialist country, the political and economic management stratum and the broad working masses, as well as the division of labor within the proletariat and the peasantry in society as a whole, there are internal contradictions between the proletariat and the peasantry. There is also a tit-for-tat confrontation between the superficial justice and privileges, between public interest and selfish desire, and between the proletariat and the old landlord class and the remnants of the bourgeois superstructure in essence. Under the influence of the decadent superstructure, the revolutionary cadre class may degenerate into the bureaucratic bourgeoisie. Lu Qingshan and Zhang Zishan are typical bourgeois within the party corrupted by the decadent superstructure and material stimulation. There are contradictions in the development of things from beginning to end, and they must be admitted. Chairman Mao analyzed the objectively existing contradictions between the management of political and economic cadres and the broad masses in a socialist society, as well as between the cadres of political and economic management at their superiors and subordinates, between the division of labor within the proletariat, and between the working class and the peasantry, as well as the contradictions between the proletariat and the remnants of the capitalist and feudal superstructure within the socialist superstructure. We have comprehensively judged the scientific conclusion that class contradictions within socialism have existed for a long time. In the first stage of communism, we must insist on the proletarian democratic supervision of the masses to supervise cadres, and we must never forget the struggle against privileges. As time goes on, it will prove the greatness of this judgment. 3. The particularity of the contradiction. The specificity of contradictions is an important philosophical innovation of Chairman Mao. It is an important theoretical weapon for Chairman Mao to end the pro-Soviet dogmatism line and establish China's independent Marxism Sinicization line from the perspective of the fundamental philosophical world outlook. The theory of creating the particularity of contradictions is Chairman Mao's great practice of demonstrating the correctness of the Sinicization of Marxism from a philosophical perspective. Based on a large number of experiences and lessons from the practice of the Chinese Revolution, Chairman Mao proved the correctness of the strategy of arming workers and peasants with well-founded arguments. The theory of the particularity of contradictions also provides a philosophical basis for Chairman Mao's special theory of contradictions in a socialist society after the establishment of the proletarian dictatorship based on the new changes in the objective reality after the founding of the People's Republic of China. First, the contradictions in various forms of material movement have their own particularities, and contradictions of different qualities must be resolved in different ways. Each form of material movement has general similarities, but also has its own characteristics. In the process of understanding and transforming the world, we must pay attention to the qualitative difference between one form of movement and other forms of movement. Any form of motion contains special contradictions inside, which constitute the qualitative difference between one thing and other things. If you do not know the special nature, you will not be able to discover the special reasons and special basis for the movement and development of things. You will not be able to study special things correctly, and you will not be able to solve special problems correctly. According to the national conditions of China, which is different from that of Russia, and proceeding from the reality of semi-colonial and semi-feudal China, Chairman Mao analyzed the special conditions of various classes in Chinese society, the special changes of enemies and allies in different periods and the distribution of different regions, and explored the rural surrounding the city and seizing power by armed forces revolutionary road. Under the condition that the enemy is strong and we are weak in the cities, we should avoid the real and attack the weak, occupy the rural areas where the enemy is weak, and carry out the transformation of land production relations in the base areas, the expansion of military organizations, the expansion of party organizations, the economic construction of base areas, and the establishment of anti-imperialist forces. Anti-feudal democratic revolutionary regime. Relying on the rural base areas, expand the rural revolutionary base areas relatively violently when the enemy is in chaos, and capture rural areas where the enemy is weak on a large scale. When the enemy is relatively stable, expand the rural revolutionary base areas steadily and relatively slowly. When the enemy is attacking, adopt the strategic policy of luring the enemy deep or attacking the enemy's rear, with mobile warfare and guerrilla warfare as the main methods. Strategic defensive campaigns and offensives, strategic attrition campaigns and annihilation, strategic strategies of protracted campaigns for quick decisions, strategic internal and external battles, and annihilated the enemy in motion. As the rural revolutionary base areas continue to expand, while the establishment of political power, land reform, party building, army building, and base area construction in the revolutionary base areas are fully mature and perfected, they gradually form advantages over the urban warlords and enemies, forming a situation where the countryside encircles the cities. If the enemy makes a mistake or creates an opportunity for the enemy to make a mistake, attack the outside line and switch to a strategic offensive to achieve the victory of the national revolution. According to the special contradictions of socialist society, the most essential feature of capitalism is bourgeois private ownership of the means of production, while the bourgeois government is just a puppet serving the bourgeoisie that squeezes the vast working class. Therefore, the government has limited rights and only has the responsibility to serve capital and maintain order. The most basic rule of this social order is that private property is sacred and inviolable, and it is established in the form of the Constitution. It is impossible for any government to violate this principle. Moreover, the head of the bourgeois government is elected every few years, and those who are dissatisfied by the capitalists will be replaced, so a strong centralized government will not be formed. Therefore, capitalism is capital controlling the government, not the government controlling capital. Socialism is different. Because socialism is a public ownership system, the operation and management of public ownership is entrusted to the government, or rural community collectives, to implement it as an agent, which can easily lead to relatively large government rights without restrictions and balances. Therefore, the power of the socialist government is much greater than that of the capitalist government, and it has an extra function of property rights agent. But the problem is precisely here, because the power of the government is almost unlimited and lacks constraints, so it is easy to change from a servant to a master. In the absence of checks and balances and supervision, the success rate of peaceful evolution is very high, and it must be the first starting from the political field. Once the working people lose power, the economic foundation will undoubtedly collapse. Economic management cannot be carried out without entrustment, and entrustment is tantamount to giving up the power of economic management. Without the democratic supervision of the proletariat, public ownership may degenerate into private ownership of the bureaucratic capitalist class. Therefore, Chairman Mao put forward the social and political model of the masses supervise the government and the masses inspect the cadres to prevent the collective leadership from deteriorating under the dictatorship of the proletariat, and the economic management of cadres participating in labor, workers participating in management, and combining cadres and workers with skilled workers mode. Second, not only are there contradictions of different forms of material movement, such as different countries, unique, but each form of material movement also has its own contradictions in each process of its long-distance development, different periods in a country. Qualitative solution. Chairman Mao emphasized that the old process and old contradictions are resolved, and the new process produces new contradictions, and the methods for resolving contradictions are therefore different. The new democratic revolution gradually completed anti-imperialist and anti-feudalism by encircling the cities from the countryside. The socialist revolution established ownership by the whole people and collective ownership of the means of production through three major transformations. After the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat, to prevent the collective leadership from deteriorating, the supervision of the masses with the proletariat as the core and the participation of the masses in management should be carried out. Third, the fundamental contradictions take the form of gradual intensification in each stage of long-term development. Some of the contradictions, large and small, determined by the fundamental contradictions, have been intensified, some have been alleviated, and some have been temporarily or partially resolved. In each stage. During the period of the new democratic revolution, anti-imperialism and feudalism, overthrowing the three great mountains, and realizing national liberation and the liberation of the most important population class were the most fundamental tasks at that time, but the main contradictions were different in different periods. Contradictions, class contradictions in the war of liberation rose to be the main contradictions. During the period of socialist revolution, for the national bourgeoisie, solidarity and alliance were the main focus in the recovery stage of the national economy, and in the stage of gradual large-scale socialist transformation, the focus was on the internal struggle of the national bourgeoisie within the class alliance of the people's democratic dictatorship. Redemption, transformation. After the victory of the socialist revolution, when the foundation of industrialization was developing relatively rapidly, the contradiction between the cadre class and the working people under the agency appointment system of the public sector of the dictatorship of the proletariat, which was not prominent enough, became more obvious. Therefore, Chairman Mao proposed it is necessary to prevent the deterioration of the collective leadership of the revolution and rely on proletarian democratic supervision. Fourth, in order to expose the specific essence of things in the whole and the interconnection of each part, it is necessary to expose the essence of the various contradictions of things and the different aspects of the same contradiction. A big thing contains many special contradictions in the process of development. Each of these contradictions has its own particularity and cannot be treated uniformly. Not only must we understand the particularity of a big thing's contradictions in terms of the overall contradiction and the connection of each contradiction, but we must also study each contradiction and each aspect of the big thing in order to comprehensively understand the overall characteristics of the big thing. To study the different aspects of a contradiction is to study what specific place each of them occupies. What specific forms are used to create interdependent and mutually antagonistic relationships with each other, and what methods are used to specifically fight with each other in the process of dependence and rupture. In the process of the new democratic revolution, in order to find the overall essential of the semi-colonial and semi-feudal society, it is necessary to analyze in detail the national contradictions between China and foreign countries, the landlord class and the peasant class, the comprador bourgeoisie and the working class, the national bourgeoisie and the working class, and all the particularity of contradictions between the bourgeoisie and the peasantry, and within the peasantry, etc. To understand the overall situation of Chinese society at that time, it is necessary to analyze these different contradictions and the special conditions of each of the contradictory aspects and analyze them in detail. And so on, each level, that is, the specific and special conditions of the various special aspects that constitute each contradiction in each contradiction, according to different classes, contradictory aspects, and different special conditions of contradictions, as well as these contradictions and the aspects that constitute contradictions in different periods. Changes in status in different periods, comprehensively judge who is our enemy and who is our friend, and judge what is the contradiction and what is the secondary contradiction. In Analysis of Classes in Chinese Society, Chairman Mao accurately defined the socio-economic status and political stance of each party involved in the conflict based on the economic interests of each class, and thus deduced the relationship between unity and struggle. For example, with regard to the national bourgeoisie, Chairman Mao profoundly exposed its duality based on its social and economic interests with other classes, and formulated strategies for its alliance and struggle. Chinese society is a big thing, and all social classes are all aspects involved in contradictions, and the relations between various classes constitute various contradictions. Analysis of various classes in Chinese society is Chairman Mao's specific analysis and comprehensive judgment of the various participating aspects of the contradiction and each contradiction, and then accurately positioned it to use the contradiction to divide the enemy, unite the majority and isolate the minority, concentrate the advantages and defeat each. The classic foundational work on strategy. After the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat, the theory of preventing the deterioration of leadership collectives and on contradiction. The basic contradictions in socialist society are also the internal contradictions of the productive forces and production relations, the superstructure, and the economic base, and the direct manifestations are the contradictions among the various classes and strata within the proletariat. Since the production relations in our country are owned by the whole people and owned by village collectives, there is an inherent contradiction between the working class and the peasant petty bourgeoisie. Ignoring this contradiction will lead to the division of urban and rural areas. Within the working class and within the peasantry after the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat, there are internal contradictions between the social, political, and economic management strata and the working class, internal contradictions between the manual labor class and the mental labor class, simple labor classes and complex labor classes, and internal contradictions between classes. If this contradiction is ignored, socio-political and economic managers will degenerate into bureaucratic bourgeoisie. Within the socio-political and economic managers, there are contradictions between superiors and subordinates. If this contradiction is ignored, the stratum of social managers will be divided into large, medium, and small bureaucratic bourgeoisie. It is precisely the specific analysis of the participating aspects of various contradictions in socialist society and the specific analysis of each contradiction, under Chairman Mao's comprehensive judgment, opened up a new topic unprecedented in the international communist movement, preventing the deterioration of the revolutionary leadership after the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Chairman Mao's road to prevent the collective deterioration of the revolutionary leadership after the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat was essentially developed by making scientific judgments on various aspects of social actual contradictions and comprehensive judgments after specific analysis of each contradiction, which has a profound social reality foundation. Fifth, the relationship between universality and particularity of contradictions and dialectical epistemology. The relationship between the universality and particularity of a contradiction is the essence of the theory of contradiction. This is an important theoretical innovation of Chairman Mao. Chairman Mao pointed out that the process of human cognition is special universal special, from understanding special problems in practice to drawing general conclusions, and then generalizing general cognition, and creatively using and developing it in a special new time and space. This is the unity of epistemology and dialectics. And Chairman Mao's epistemology is dialectical materialist epistemology, a materialist dialectics in the field of cognition. Chairman Mao's military theory was born out of long-term investigation and research on China's actual situation and revolutionary practice in various fields, and was further creatively enriched and developed in the subsequent revolutionary practice, from the bloody battles in Jinggangshan and Rujin to summing up experience and lessons in Yan'an, the formation of mature theories, the great development of the Revolutionary Army, and the war practice of the major field armies during the War of Liberation further enriched and developed Chairman Mao's military thought. It can be seen that the development of Mao Zedong's military thought is a process from special to general, and from general to special. Chairman Mao's theory of preventing the deterioration of revolutionary leadership collectives is also summarized from San Juan's adaptation of the special practice of opposing bureaucratism and warlordism like Yu Seidu, opposing corruption in the Soviet area, and reviewing cadres during the Yan'an rectification movement. And Cape Welling pair formed a relatively clear theory, which was developed and perfected in the practice of the 3 antis and 5 antis after the founding of the People's Republic of China, especially the practice of opposing the corruption of bureaucracy and the unlimited expansion of the power of the management class in political and economic management after the 3 major transformations further enriched and developed the theory of preventing deterioration of leading collectives. There is a dialectical relationship between the universality and particularity of contradictions, therefore, the universality and particularity of contradictions are connected with each other and transformed into each other under certain conditions. In a socialist society, under the conditions of the proxy appointment system of political and economic management, the contradiction between the adherence to the proletarian revolutionary line and the restoration of the capitalist privileged line is common, and the struggle between the proletariat and the privileged class is common. However, throughout the history of mankind, the contradictions of socialist society are a special contradiction. The universality of contradiction resides in the particularity. The struggle between the line of privilege restoration and the line of proletarian revolution, which is a common contradiction in the history of the international communist movement, has different manifestations in different countries. In the Soviet Union, a purely bureaucratic hierarchical order was solidified. Khrushchev tampered with the theory of the dictatorship of the proletariat, abolished the dictatorship of the proletariat, and advocated socialism without contradictions. In China, there is excessive warlordism, the corruption of Liu Qingshan and Zhang Zishan, and some people's enthusiasm for the bureaucratic hierarchy of the Soviet Union. During the Revolutionary War period, especially the Yan'an period, Chairman Mao was extremely sensitive and promptly opened up the road of preventing the collective deterioration of the revolutionary leadership with the proletariat as the core and mass democratic supervision as the main method in the face of some realistic germination and the lessons of the Soviet Union. This is the path that Chairman Mao explored based on China's special actual conditions, but it has a general guiding significance for the practice of preventing the deterioration of revolutionary leadership groups throughout the history of the world communist movement. For example, agriculture learns from Dazai and learns from Dating are typical examples of universal laws embedded in the particular. Supplement, adhere to the particularity of contradictions and insist on specific analysis of specific issues to oppose subjectivity, one-sidedness, and superficiality. One-sidedness and superficiality are themselves subjectivity divorced from specific and concrete reality. One-sidedness, only looking at the trees, not the forest. Superficiality, only looking at the phenomenon, not the essence, that is, ignoring the main aspect of the main contradiction stipulated by the fundamental contradiction. To insist on preventing the deterioration of the revolutionary leadership after the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat is to oppose subjectivity, one-sidedness, and superficiality. To oppose subjectivity is to oppose ignoring the internal contradictions that exist objectively in socialist society. To oppose one-sidedness is to oppose only looking at the revolutionary side of the revolutionary cadres and ignoring the corruption of the cadre class under the proxy appointment system to the bureaucratic bourgeoisie. For example, during the first 5-year plan, during the rapid development of my country's industrial base, Chairman Mao also deeply discovered the inherent drawbacks of the Soviet hierarchy. To oppose superficiality is to oppose only partial corruption and ignore the internal contradictions between the power of cadres and the working people under the proxy appointment system. It is necessary to persist in the practice of proletarian democracy in all aspects of production relations and superstructure. Chairman Mao emphasized that all things themselves also develop due to internal contradictions, interrelationships, and interactions within and between things. Only by understanding these internal contradictions and the changes and developments brought about by the interaction between things can we oppose subjectivism that is divorced from reality. 4. The main contradiction and the main aspects of the contradiction. In the particularity of contradictions, we must pay special attention to the main contradictions and the main aspects of contradictions in one thing, one period, and one stage. In the process of the development of things, the existence and development of the principal contradiction plays a leading and dominating role, and other contradictions are in a secondary and subordinate position, and the primary and secondary contradictions transform into each other under certain conditions. That's why Chairman Mao emphasized the need to focus on the key points, grasp the mainstream, and make overall plans. The imbalance of each contradiction is absolute, the balance is relative, and there is only one principal contradiction. The main aspect of the principal contradiction in a society determines the nature of the society. The main aspect of the internal contradictions of a thing determines the nature of the thing, and the primary and secondary aspects transform each other to a certain extent. From this, the following discussion begins. On contradiction, Chairman Mao emphasized that under certain conditions, the superstructure will have a decisive reaction to the production relations, and the production relations will also have a decisive reaction to the productivity under certain conditions. The production relationship is essentially the relationship between people in the production process. After the establishment of the nominal ownership by the whole people, if the bureaucratic production relationship is implemented purely from top to bottom, and the superior orders the subordinates, then the nominal ownership of the whole people will also be the same. However, it has become a private enterprise of the bureaucratic capitalist class. In the long run, the polarization of the rich and the poor, the intensification of contradictions, and the restoration of capitalism will seriously hinder the development of productive forces. A socialist society is a transitional state from a capitalist society to a communist society, and the remnants of capitalism and feudalism still exist in large quantities in the superstructure, in social consciousness, ideology, and culture. Under the influence of the wrong capitalist social consciousness of material stimulation and selfish desire stimulation, the privileged selfish desires of the social, political, economic, and management classes are inflated, and the political superstructure system is a purely top-down agency appointment system that lacks supervision by the masses. It has brought huge social soil to the restoration of bureaucratic capitalist production relations. The decisive reaction on the positive side is precisely because of the victory of the three major transformations in 1956, and the establishment of the socialist system in our country, which greatly liberated and developed productive forces, and established an independent and complete heavy industry system, modern infrastructure system, modern defense equipment system. 5. Struggle identity of all aspects of a contradiction. Identity exists in a unity, and the existence of one party is premised on the existence of the other party. They influence each other, penetrate each other, depend on each other, connect each other, and transform each other to a certain extent. Without counter-revolution, there would be no revolutionaries. Without bourgeois material stimulus and pure bureaucratic superstructure, the budding of production relations, there would be no practice of preventing the collective deterioration of the revolutionary leadership after the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Socialism itself is also the first stage of communism that retains bourgeois legal rights, has internal class differences, and transitions from capitalism to communism. The division of labor and distribution gap between the social population and the population still exist. Within this unity lies the struggle between the line of proletarian democracy and the line of bourgeois revolution. Identity is relative, struggle is absolute, and contradictions are universal. Therefore, Chairman Mao has always acknowledged the universal existence of contradictions, persisted in discovering contradictions, and continuously resolved one contradiction after another. Chairman Mao resolutely maintained against class contradictions, adhered to the fundamental direction of the proletarian stand, and emphasized that only grasping revolution can promote production. 6. The position of confrontation in contradictions. Here, Chairman Mao emphasized, confrontation is a form of contradiction struggle, not all forms. The line struggle within the party and the line struggle within the socialist society are actually the reflection of class contradictions within the party, and the manifestation of different class interests and needs. If non-antagonistic struggles within a socialist society are not resolved and internal contradictions are ignored, there is a danger of turning into antagonistic contradictions. On contradiction, we can find too many germinations of Chairman Mao's brilliant thoughts. It can be said that with his theory sublimated from his experience and lessons in the Revolutionary War, there will be his great practice after the founding of the People's Republic of China.